All right. So in the last lecture, we were discussing this hashing strategy known as cuckoo hashing, right? So it was combining two things. It was combining the two choice hashing and open addressing, some form of open addressing. Right? It was using uh, ideas from both of them together, right? And what was the what is the idea of cuckoo hashing? So you have um, so you want to map m elements into a table of size n, right? And you choose two hash functions, right? H1 and H2. These are random hash functions. These are random functions, right? And what you do is every element x is put in h1x or h2x, whichever is free, right? And if there is a y in one both h1x and h2x, you find the place to which y can be moved to. So you move y from that position and move to the corresponding ones, right? So if t of h1x, or this is the table, right? If both t h1x and t h2x are occupied, then you move, right? Then move the element, move either one of th1x or th2x to its alternate position, right? And you keep doing this until you can right, you keep doing this until you can until there are no more, you don't have to move anything more, right? The name comes from the fact that it's like the nesting pattern of this cuckoo, right? Where the bird goes and lays its egg in one nest, and if it throws away the eggs of whatever eggs were there in that nest, right? And and what we wanted to show, right, for this cuckoo hashing was that expected search time is order 1, right? This is what we were trying to prove, correct? And also the worst case, this we will see briefly, is order login, right? So we were in the process of trying to prove this statement, right? The search case time. And towards that end, we said that we can, corresponding to the table T, we can have this what is known as the cuckoo graph, right? So it's a graph G on n vertices, right? And m edges, right? Where you have an edge from this edge uv is present in the graph. If maybe I'll just for every element x, put the edge h1x comma h2x in the graph, right? So this graph is a multi-graph and contains self loops, right? And the property that you want to so searching would amount to looking at connected components in this graph, right? So the search time is related to the size of the connected components in the cuckoo graph, correct? And this cuckoo graph is basically a random graph, right? This is a it's a random graph with m edges where edge I is inserted between two vertices chosen uniformly at random. So you want to show that in this, to analyze search time, what we're going to show is that this random graph obtained by taking each of the m edges and placing it uniformly at random between two vertices in the graph, right? The size of the connected component in this cuckoo graph, the expected size is order 1, right? And that is what we were trying to do, right? Any questions? We are just trying to recall what we did last time. Any questions? Okay. So then what we said was that analyzing this random graph might be a little more harder. So what we will do instead is to analyze the what is known as the Erdős-Rényi graph, right? So this graph we denoted by GNM, right? This is the random graph with m edges, right? And instead of this, what we said was that we will analyze this graph, which we'll call, so I think the notation last time that we had was G, N, and M. Instead of this, we will look at the graph G and P, where this is the Erdős-Rényi graph, where what we do is for each UV in the vertex set, you put the edge with probability P, right? So in graph G and M, the number of vertex edges are fixed, and G and P, the number of edges can vary, but each edge is put in the graph with probability P independent of the other edges, right? And we saw this theorem which says that as far as monotone graph properties, monotonically increasing graph properties are concerned, right? So look at graph properties where if you keep adding edges, the property can only, the property will not go away, right? For instance, if you have a connected component of size k, if you take a graph and you're looking at the property that the graph contains a connected component of size at least k, okay? So this is a monotonically increasing property because if you keep adding edges, you will not reduce the size of the largest connected component, right? You cannot reduce the size of the connected component, it can only increase, right? So it's like a monotonically increasing property. And the theorem that we saw, maybe I'll just briefly look at it right now, right? This was the theorem that we stated, right? What it says that if you take any monotone increasing graph property and you look at PNN, right? This is the probability that if you pick a graph from GNN, right? That's a graph with n vertices and capital N edges. Then the probability that the property holds, right? That is given by this capital P. That lies sandwiched between these two quantities, right? Where this is the corresponding probability when G is an Erdős-Rényi graph. So what intuitively what it says is that to analyze the connected components of the graph obtained from GNM or the graph, the cuckoo graph, it is sufficient to analyze this Erdős-Rényi graph, which is given by G and P. For what value of P? So you want the expected number of, so say you sample G from this Erdős-Rényi graph as an Erdős-Rényi graph, you want the expected size of the edges in G, right? The expected size, the number of edges in G to be like M, right? This is what you want, so that you can then claim that it is concentrated around that expectation, right? So for that, you need P to be something like M divided by N choose 2. So that the expected number of edges is just n choose 2 times m, which is m, right? This is what we will have. So in particular, we will say that, so notice that in our So let me just state the theorem that the formal theorem that we are trying to prove. Right? If G is sampled from G N M, where M is something like 1 minus epsilon n by 2, okay, then the sorry, let me just state it. Then the expected size of a connected component of the connected component, sorry, containing a fixed vertex uh, sorry, I think there is some issue with my tablet. Contain a fixed vertex V is order 1, right? And this is towards this, what we will do is that we will look at, instead of studying this graph generated as from GNM, we will instead look at the graph G that is obtained from GNP, where P is something like 1 minus um, say 1 plus, sorry, something like 1 plus epsilon prime m divided by n choose 2. Okay, it's very similar to what we actually want, so that the expected number of edges would be something like 1 plus epsilon prime into m, right? So if you take this value, so for our fixed value, when m is 1 minus epsilon n over 2, this is something like 1 plus epsilon prime times 1 minus epsilon n divided by 2 times n choose 2. So this you can write it as something like 1 minus gamma by n minus 1. Okay, so we'll take epsilon prime to be some constant less than epsilon. So instead of taking, so m is known to us, m is 1 minus epsilon n over 2. Instead of that, what we will look at is, we will look at a graph that is obtained from the Erdős-Renyi model with the value p to be fixed to this constant. Okay? And what we have seen from the last class is that this is sufficient. If you can bound the expected size of the connected component in this graph, then that suffices for the actual graph that we are studying of the cuckoo graph, right? Any questions so far? Okay. So let's try to analyze this expected size. Okay. So for that, let's see how. So let's fix the vertex. So V is a fixed vertex, right? And let's do the following, right? Let's look at this following process where you do a BFS starting from V. Okay. Now, what you want to know is that what is the expected size that you're going to see, right? When you, of the graph that you're going to see when you do a BFS from V. Okay. So firstly, say let us start from V. What can you say about, so let n of V be the set of neighbors of V, right? When G is sampled according to this Erdős-Renyi model, right? What can you say about the expected size of n of V? Or rather, so this is a random variable, right? The cardinality of n of V, this is a random variable. How is this random variable distributed? What is the distribution of this random variable? Yeah, so it's binomial, right? So this is a binomial random variable, right? Because in GNP, what happens is that V is a fixed vertex. You have n minus one different vertices, right? And each edge is put with probability P, right? So that's like you have, so as Pragyan and Sarthak says, this is a binomial distribution with n minus one and the parameter P, right? All right, good. So the first process, so when you start with V, you expect to see binomial n minus 1 comma P, n minus 1 times P many neighbors, right? So you keep doing this, okay? So let's say that you have, so you do the BFS, and let's say that you have the vertices V1, V2 up till Vi minus 1, right? These have been visited by the BFS, right? And then, so this has been visited by the BFS, and there is some queue, right? This is the BFS queue where you have been adding the vertices that you're the neighbors that you're adding into the queue to continue the search, right? And let's say that you start with the vertex Vi, okay, the ith step of the BFS. Okay? Now, so let Zi, okay, be the number of neighbors of Vi that you see in the BFS, right? The reason is that Zi might not contain all the neighbors, right? So if you're doing the BFS, some of the neighbors of Vi might have already been visited in the previous round of the BFS. So you might not see all the neighbors of Vi at this stage, right? Now the question is, we need to look at how many neighbors you're seeing, right? We need to actually, this is by counting these number of neighbors, that is what is going to give us the size of the connected component. Okay? But notice that Zi, to understand Zi is fairly difficult, right? Zi depends on not just which level of the BFS you're doing, but it depends on how many nodes that you have already seen, right? Or how many neighbors of Vi you have already seen. It very much depends on the structure of the graph, right? If I don't tell you anything about the graph, then it's very difficult for you to exactly tell me how Zi is going to be, right? Uh, what is like an upper bound that you can give for Zi, cardinality Zi? This is definitely at most n minus I. Okay. This is all that you can say. You cannot say anything more, because it is possible that when when you're seeing V1, V2, you might be it might be like a path that is sitting in there, and then you will see Vi, and then there are remaining n minus I vertices to be visited. Maybe that is the case, or maybe Zi could actually be even be zero, right? Maybe all the neighbors of Vi were already visited in the when you did the BFS on V1 to Vi minus 1. So you cannot basically say anything about Zi if I don't tell you the structure of the graph. Okay? You cannot say anything exactly, but what you can actually say is that you can actually give an upper bound. Okay, and the upper bound you can say is the following, right? So the probability that Zi is greater than or equal to some number t, you can say that this is bounded by the probability that the binomial random variable with n minus 1 and p is greater than t. Okay. So what you can say is that this binomial random variable dominates Zi, right? Zi is where you have at most n minus I variable vertices, and you want to choose p out of them, right? This is definitely upper bounded by this larger process where you have n minus 1 vertices remaining, and you choose p as p neighbors out of it, and this being greater than or equal to t, right? So the idea is that Zi is very hard to exactly understand, because it very much depends on the structure of the graph and from which vertex you start your BFS. Well, definitely this is an upper bound that is oblivious to the structure of the graph or where you started out with. Okay. So what we will do is, instead of analyzing these quantities, these random variables, which seem very hard to understand without knowing the graph, we will look at these sort of graph oblivious quantities, and we'll try to use these random variables to bound the ones that we want. Again, it's an approximation. But since we don't know the graph and the structure of the graph and the vertices that from where you're doing the BFS, this is probably the best that you can do at this stage. Okay. So now, instead of actually trying to understand the bounding the connected component size of the graph, what you do instead is you look at the following process. Okay. So you start from vertex V. Now you choose. Oh, sorry. You choose k children of V according to the binomial distribution with n minus 1 comma p. For each of them, you choose some number of children according to the binomial distribution n minus 1 comma p, and you keep doing this. Okay. Now the question that you want to ask is, what is the expected number of nodes in this graph, in this tree, basically? Right? If I can bound this quantity, right, where I'm using this b n minus 1, the binomial random variable, this as an upper bound for the actual number of neighbors that you might see, then definitely this upper bounds the expectation that I really want. Okay. So it's sufficient for me to study this process. Okay. So this is what is known as a branching process. Okay. By studying this branching process, I will get an upper bound on the expected size of the component containing V when the graph is sampled as from the as an Erdős-Rényi graph. Right? Because this is the best that I can do currently, because I don't know anything about the graph that might come out of the from the Erdős-Rényi sample distribution. Any questions? Is this idea clear? Right. So we have done multiple levels of approximation. Right. We started out with the cuckoo graph, which we said let's not analyze the cuckoo graph directly, but instead analyze the Erdős-Rényi graph. In the Erdős-Rényi graph, instead of analyzing the connected size component in the graph directly, we said that we can, starting from a vertex V, the connected component size can be approximated by the size of the branching process, where the number of nodes for every number of children for every node is chosen according to the binomial distribution. Right? So there are two levels of approximation that we're doing. Any questions on this? Is this clear? So what we want to actually do is to find the expected size of this branching process, right? So in particular, so you have a branching process and you want to find the expected number of nodes, right? So what can you say? So let yi be the number of nodes in the ith level. Right? We are interested in y, which is summation yi, right, where I is greater than or equal to 0. Where I will go from 1 to n, actually, not greater than, it will go from 1 to n. Right? Because this is the largest number of nodes that n nodes are there. So this is what you want. At most n levels it can go. Right? And we want to find, so what we are interested in is expectation of y, which is summation I equal to 1 to n expectation of yi, right? And what can you say about expectation of okay, maybe I should just put I great. It's not I equal to 1 to n. This can grow, right? This can be infinite actually, right? This process can never stop. All it can just go on if you want. The way we have defined this branching process, it is possible that it will just grow. There is probability that it will be an infinitely big tree, right? So how do you compute expectation of yi? Right? So expectation of yi is nothing but I can use this conditional expectation to say that there's a probability that in the I minus first layer you had yi minus 1 nodes, and then the expected value of yi, given that in the I minus 1's first level you had only I minus 1 nodes. right? And so let's look at what is this quantity, right? Yi, given that yi minus 1 is equal to y small yi minus 1. Any questions so far? Any questions? Okay. So what does this mean? So this means that at level, so you have this tree, right? And at level I minus 1, you have so many children, right? And you're looking at how many children can the next level have. This is the ith level, right? So this, I can write it in the following way, right? It's the expectation of the summation of these random variables, which I will call, say, wi, where I goes from 1 to small yi minus 1, right? Given that yi minus 1 is equal to small yi minus 1, right? So the reason is that, so this wi is basically the number of children for each of the nodes in the I minus first level, right? So what can I say? So how is wi minus 1 distributed? So wi minus I is basically distributed as a binomial random variable with n minus 1 p, correct? So this is what we really want to um, compute, right? So what is, so let's just expand this out. So this is summation, right, over j um, greater than or equal to 0, j times the probability that this summation equal to j, given that yi minus 1 is equal to yi minus 1, right? This is the just the expansion of the expectation, right? Notice that this probability, right? So this sum is somehow independent, right? So each after the I minus first level, the number of nodes in the each for each node in the tree is an independent binomially distributed random variable, right? So this is nothing but summation j greater than or equal to 0, j times the probability that I equal to 1 to yi minus 1, wi is equal to j, right? Because each of the wi's are independent binomial, right? What is this? This is nothing but um, right, this is nothing but the expected value of summation wi, right? Which I can say is nothing but summation I equal to 1 to yi minus 1 expectation of wi. And what is expectation of wi? It is n minus 1 times p, right? And so this is yi times n minus 1 times p. And in our case, so in our case, p is actually equal to 1 minus gamma, right? So this is nothing but yi times, oh sorry, p is 1 minus gamma divided by n minus 1, right? So this is yi times 1 minus gamma. Okay, so this is the expectation that the expectation of, sorry, so it's the expectation of yi given yi minus 1 equal to small yi minus 1. So you can write the expectation of yi as summation probability that in the I minus first level you have small yi minus 1 nodes times yi into 1 minus gamma, right? So if you just notice, this is, so if you notice, this is nothing but 1 minus gamma times the expectation of yi minus 1, right? Because this term is just that. So if you just keep continuing this, what you will get is that this is nothing but 1 minus gamma to the I, right? Recursively, if you keep writing expectation of yi minus 1 in terms of yi minus 2 and so on, you will get that this is 1 minus gamma to the I, right? And therefore, expected value of y is summation I greater than or equal to 0, 1 minus gamma to the I, which is equal to 1 over gamma. Okay. So if you have a branching process where the number of children are distributed according to the binomial distribution with say n minus 1, 1 minus gamma by n minus 1, right? Then the expected size of that tree that you obtain is just 1 over gamma. It's a constant size tree, right? So in particular, yeah, just to clarify, some of the RHS is from. So which part is this? Yeah, it's from j equal to 1 to. Yeah, you are right. You are right, Sarthak. Sorry, I just. Yeah. So it's not. Maybe I should say k or something, right? I should not use the same notation. Yeah, you're right. Sorry for that. Let me just replace that. Right? Yeah. Okay. Good. So even though the branching process can potentially have an infinitely large tree, the expected size of that branching process is just 1 over gamma, right? It's a constant. So what this means is that if you have a graph chosen from the Erdős-Renyi process, right? And if you assume that the number of neighbors, when you do the BFS, the number of neighbors that you see is a binomial random variable with parameters n minus 1 and p, then the expected size of the component is a constant, right? So therefore, in our case, the distribution, right? The binomial distribution, we already saw that the actual number of neighbors that a node can have is this Zi, right? The probability that Zi is greater than or equal to p is bounded by this quantity here, right? So let's see how that is going to help us. So what are we interested in finally? So we are interested in the size of the. So let so x be the size of the connected component in Gn comma m. Okay, this is the actual cuckoo graph. This is the one that we are trying to bound, right? Let we've used a lot of notation, so let x, y, w, z. Let r, or let let r be the size of the connected component in GNP. Okay, this is the one that we are analyzing here. Okay, what we do know is that the expected size of x, right? What is the expected size of x? Expected size of x is nothing but summation I equal to 1 to 1 to n. It's I times the probability that x is equal to I, right? So this you can actually, if you write it out, this is nothing but summation I equal to 1 to n, the probability that x is greater than or equal to I. Right? You can just write this out separately, right? Because what this is saying is that this is probability x is equal to 1 plus probability that x is equal to 1, x is equal to 2 plus probability that x is equal to 2 plus 3 times probability x is equal to 3, right? That's what this is. So then if you just regroup the sum, right? This is probability that x is greater than or equal to 1. Here you will have probability x is greater than or equal to 2 and so on. Right? This is what we want to compute. What we actually have is that what we know from previous from the last lecture is that this quantity is upper bounded by summation I equal to 1 to n probability that r is greater than or equal to I plus an error term, which is something like very, very tiny. It's e raised to minus O of n times n, right, for the sum. Right? This is because GNM is approximated by GNP, right? That is why this term is coming. And now here you have this is so this, you know that this is this term here, right? This is what we said is dominated by the binomial B n minus 1p, right? So therefore, this is nothing but at most 1 over gamma plus n times e to the minus O of n. Right? So this is nothing but order 1. Right? So there are two levels of approximation, right? The first one, which says that instead of understanding this graph where the edges can be dependent, we study this graph generated from the Erdős-Rényi model and then bound the size of the connected component of the graph by using this branching process. Right? So typically, what happens is that so you can actually, there is a lot of work that goes into understanding these graphs, right? For instance, as p grows, right, the graph if you sample a g from G and p, then it is connected. Then it is with high probability it is connected. And what we are saying is that we don't want to go into this regime, right? You don't want to have a highly connected graph. You want to have graphs where the connectivity is really, really small, right? Only then the search complexity of your hashing algorithm will be good, right? So in our case, it is good because our p is something like 1 minus gamma by n minus 1, right? Because the size of our hash table is at least twice the number of elements that are going to be put inside that table. Right? So because of that property, we are analyzing this random graph where p is very small, right? And therefore, the number of connected components in the graph is very large, and each connected component is of very small size. Therefore, the cuckoo hashing runs in order 1 time in expectation. Right? Is this clear? Any questions regarding this? Right? So a similar, we will not do it, but a similar analysis by, again looking at the Erdős-Rényi graph and then analyzing instead of analyzing the size of the number of neighbors that you see during a BFS, instead of that, looking at the corresponding binomial random variable, you can also show the following, right? With high probability, right? With high probability will be something like 1 minus 1 over n squared, right? If you sample a G from GNM, right, where M is 1 minus epsilon n over 2, then the size of the largest component is order log n, right? It basically means that you will not find any component of size larger than this, right? So if you actually were to use this and the cuckoo hashing, the worst case would be something like order log n, correct? So this proof we are not doing. It's again similar. So what you do is you try to bound. So you have these random variables zi that we saw, right? This is the number of neighbors of zi is the number of neighbors that you see in the BFS. You want to make so what does it mean to say that the connected component size is small? It basically means that the sum of these zi's are not very large. And what we want to show is that the probability that sum of zi is large is bounded by some very small value. And we use this this fact again to, instead of doing find bounding the probability that summation zi is greater than t is smaller than something, instead of that we say we bound the probability that summation of binomial these random variables, so with n minus 1 and p, is greater than or equal to t. And summation of binomial random variables are again independent binomial random variables, are is again another binomial random variable. And then you can apply your Chernoff bounds and so on, and you will get the bounds, right? So I will not do it. It's there in the book, the analysis. It's not very complicated, right? It's the same idea that we have seen already, that is just applied there. Right? So this means that not only do you have good expected behavior, but the worst case behavior is also like order log n, right? And what you do actually in cuckoo hashing is that when so you don't actually try to keep searching, right? So the question in the case of cuckoo hashing is, when do you stop your search, right? You start searching and then you find the first position where x can be inserted, but then you realize that in both positions where x can be inserted there are elements present, so you take one of those elements and then you try to move it. Now you keep doing this can keep go on forever, right? So when do you stop, or how long should you continue before you stop, right? To make this really work very well, you don't want to continue for too long, right? So typically what happens is that if your search goes on for too long, you just stop and then you rehash, right? So if so this is the other thing that sometimes people do, right? If the search goes for something like log n or something, right? Then what you do is then you rehash the table with new hash functions h1 and h2. And it turns out that this is in the amortized when you do the amortized complexity, when you look at the amortized complexity, this is again going to be a constant. So this is something that you can do, right? It's not very expensive. There are different ways in which failures are handled. There are things like you create a small array where you store the elements that cannot be put into into the cuckoo hash table. You put it in that other small array, and then you search in the array and so on. So there are various different ways in which the failures are handled. Okay, and yeah. So any questions so far? So the interesting thing to note here is this analysis is actually using the fact that h1 and h2 is uniformly random, right? And it is possible to actually analyze this when h1 and h2 are from more general class of hash functions, like say 2 universal and so on, which we saw, which are the more practical versions of hash functions, right? But the only thing is the analysis that we saw here is very much tailored to random hash functions because of the use of random graphs and so on. So the actual paper, right? I think the paper is by Rasmus Pag and Fiedler from 2001, right? So their analysis is slightly different. So it's if you want, you can actually look at their paper where they do a different analysis, and they also look at what happens when you instead of h1 and h2 being completely random, when you actually use hash families that are, you know, actually which are implementable, right, rather than purely random function. What happens? How does the cuckoo hashing behave, right? And there are very interesting results and so on. And there is a lot of work in how to extend the ideas in cuckoo hashing, right? For instance, instead of doing open addressing, what happens if you put in a small chain for every entry in the table? That is something that people have done, right? So there's a lot of analysis that have been done. For instance, you can ask in this table what happens when the table is dynamic. How do you delete elements from the hash table and so on, right? So there's a lot of work that is done in the cuckoo hashing. So you can probably look at the book and the references therein. Also, this I'll give a link to the paper. Also, you can look at the paper where this idea is introduced first. Right? So that brings us to a close about hashing. Right? So we will not be doing any more hashing and so on. So there are a lot of work. So this is just a very small sample of what has been done. So you will also see it when you're actually doing the course reading. So there is one couple of papers related to hashing and so on. So you'll listen more about it when they present it in class. Right? So we will close hashing for now, and we will start with this the next module of this course, which is about Markov chains and random walks. Right? So these are again tools, design tools for randomized algorithms. So we'll see what these objects are and how they are used in some design of some very nice algorithms. Right? So that's the next module of this course. So we'll stop with hashing. We'll not be doing any more hashing. Right? So I think we've covered a fair bit of different hashing algorithms and techniques and analysis. Right? Any questions regarding whatever we have done? Any questions at all regarding this or something from the previous week or right? We can discuss now. And so would you like to have some, so the assignment deadline is tomorrow, right? So we will have a discussion of the assignment problems, the problems in the assignment, maybe either on Wednesday or Thursday. Right? So problem set 1, I should return back. So I am a little late in that. I'll give it to you as soon as possible. And we will discuss problem set 2 either on Wednesday or Thursday. And we'll also spend time going over parts of the course, right? If you have some parts of the course that is not clear to you and you want me to discuss, we can always do that during one of those sessions, right? Either Wednesday or Thursday. Right? So that's all that I wanted to say today. So I think we will wrap up today's lecture. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we are done. Yeah. Thanks.